Hello fellow Clashers, welcome to another episode of Challenge Winning Decks. Before we get started, I did want to say or ask what you guys thought about that intro. That was made by Archwing. I'll leave a link to his channel if you're interested in getting an intro done for you or a graphic designed logo. He's done both of my intro videos for free. He's looking for some more people to do some stuff with, so go ahead and contact him if you're interested. Also, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching these videos. If you like this one, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, and also leave a comment in the section below. I read all of my comments and probably respond to about 90% of them. I promise you won't be missed. Since the day I started this challenge winning deck series, I have had so many people putting in the comments saying that they wanted a Sparky deck that could win a challenge. Now at the time I was a member of Son of a Witch. They're an amazing clan at trophy pushing. They're very well organized, already doing really well, up in the top 30 in North America. If you're interested in joining them, there's more information in the description. Anyway, so I went to them and I said, guys, you need to come up with a Sparky deck that can do this. A Titan accepted the challenge, and after a lot of deck testing, he finally made a deck that works extremely well, and I'm here to show you how to use it. The deck does utilize the Elixir Collector. I think that the Elixir Collector is necessary for the deck to work out. This is after the nerf to the Elixir Collector, and I know that people have not been using it. A lot of people think that it's not as useful anymore, but it actually works really well with this deck because it allows you to be really defensive until you're ready to make your attack, like a Titan is right at this moment. Currently in the meta, we're seeing actually a lot of rockets in a gameplay, and the rocket is definitely a big enemy of Sparky, and so the Elixir Collector allows for rocket bait, believe it or not, and that's another reason why the Elixir Collector is so good in this deck. As with a lot of Sparky decks, the goal should be to try and get the Sparky behind your Giant so that Sparky can act as a supportive troop while your Giant is taking the majority of the damage. What really makes this combo work really well is if you can get your Fire Spirits behind your Sparky, so that if your opponent tries to do any type of troops that distract your Sparky, those Fire Spirits will take care of them so your Sparky can land a hit. Another great card in this deck is the Mega Minion, which allows you to support that Sparky even more and make it more likely to get a hit on the tower, but also the Mega Minion is so good at defending, which is one reason why we want it in this deck. The Minion Horde is a really great card to be using right now. It allows as a secondary win condition with your Miner to try and get some damage on there. The fact that this deck has 2 win conditions makes it really easy for you to think, or to make your opponent think that you're going to try to win with Sparky, when really you might even just be using Sparky as a distraction with your Miner and your Minion Horde. Thank you so much to a Titan for making that deck and letting me use this replay. You truly are an amazing player. If you're interested in sharing a challenge-winning replay with me, go ahead and go to my Kairos Studios clan and post it right there. You never know if you're going to be on the next episode. Now this is a fun deck that was made by Silly Bear. He is a Kairos warrior. If you're interested in joining the Kairos family clan, go ahead and look in the description below for more information. This deck is actually one of the decks that I've been using in the ladder. It helped me get over 4,000 trophies, and it's actually a lot of fun to play with. It works really well, especially because it has a counter to almost all popular counters to the Xbow. I'm going to go over that soon, but I did want to just say one thing first. Playing the Xbow takes a lot of practice, and the best Xbow players are the ones that can remember which cards are in their opponent's deck that are most likely to be used to counter their Xbow. If you're good at remembering what is in your opponent's deck, this deck might just be a deck for you to use. The trick to it is knowing which cards are in your opponent's hands and prematurely defending against those cards as soon after you lay down the Xbow, or even in the back behind your King's Tower before you lay down the Xbow. In here we have the Fire Spirits or the Fireball to take care of things like the Minions, Minion Horde, or even Barbarians. We have the Skeleton Army that's going to help to defend against Mini P.E.K.K.A.s and towers like the Inferno Tower. The Mega Minion is an important card in this deck because it helps to defend against other Mega Minions, and also the Miner like we're seeing right here. Ice Spirit is really great at defending against other Ice Spirits or even the Fire Spirit. It can also defend against Inferno Towers that are locked onto your Xbow, so that it gives you a little bit of time to cycle back to something else so that your Xbow, so that the Inferno Tower is not going to lock onto your Xbow. Next we have the Log. The log is not necessary in this deck, but it is slightly stronger than Zap is, so I do recommend using the log if you have it. If you don't, Zap is totally usable. It's better in some circumstances, it's a little bit worse in other circumstances, but works very well. Now the log and the Zap are really important for this deck to work out because a Skeleton Army is such a good card right now. Which, by the way, I am amazed at the Skeleton Army being a good card. I haven't played the Skeleton Army a ton until just recently, and I'm loving the many uses of it, but that's besides the point. Now, when it comes to playing this deck, one thing that is a little bit difficult facing are decks that are really heavy. You know, like the Lava Hound or Giant decks, they can be a little bit of a problem if you don't know how to play against them. The trick is to successfully defend against really big pushes using either the Inferno Tower or even the Fireball and your Mega Minion. Even the Skeleton Army, you want to try and defend against them with as little elixir as possible, and then set up a counter push with your Xbow. Sometimes it is good to put your Xbow in the middle of the arena just to add an extra defense if you need to. If you're serious about playing this Xbow deck, I highly recommend going back to earlier in the video when I talked about those counters. Now this is a really fun deck that is actually more of a spell bait deck than a Golem beatdown deck. In fact, most of the time you should probably save your Golem until double elixir unless you have a really good elixir advantage on your opponent, or if your opponent is building up a really big push. In that case, place the Golem in the lane that your opponent is building and try to meet them on there. With the exception of the Lava Hound, if your opponent is playing the Lava Hound, you should probably go the opposite side. This deck only has two defensive troops that don't get destroyed by area damage, the Mega Minion and the Miner. Obviously the Miner is going to be used primarily on offense, and so really it comes down to the Mega Minion to defend most pushes if your opponent has a spell on hand. The Skeleton Army and the Goblin Barrel are your two cards that are destroyed by any spell, so you have to be very careful about how you use them. If you have the Goblin Barrel in your starting hand, it might not even be a bad idea just to throw down a Goblin Barrel on your opponent's tower so that you can find out what spell your opponent has. By doing that, you'll usually be fine using that Skeleton Army either on offense or on defense, depending on what's going on. If you have the Furnace, then that's also a really great thing to put in there. You never know if your opponent is going to try and stop a Furnace with a Zap or something like that. If they do that, they're in big trouble because you're most likely going to be able to get a tower. Once you know which spells and area affecting troops your opponent has, then it's time to try and formulate your attack. Because this deck is so susceptible to splash damage, it's really important to find out what kind of a deck your opponent has before making this decision. If your opponent has a deck that is really heavy on the splash damage, then it's probably best to go for some type of a Golem push. By doing this and then using the Mega Minion and the Miner and maybe even the Furnace behind them, then you're going to be able to really get a lot of damage on their tower. If your opponent has a deck that is really heavy on point damage, then you're in a lot of luck, and that is because you're going to be able to try and cycle through your small troops to the point where your opponent's not going to be able to beat them. In this situation, it might even be a good idea to not even use your Golem. Most really good deck builders will make decks that don't fall into either of these categories. They make what are called balanced decks, where they use a good amount of splash damage, they also use a good amount of area damage. When you're facing these types of decks, this is when you're going to want to really pay attention to which spells your opponent is using and which splash troops they're using as well. By doing this, your hope is to try and counter them when they are off guard and they're not able to make a good defense against you. If your opponent has either the Fireball or the Minion Horde, then I highly recommend being very cautious about using the Minion Horde. Wait until either they've used it on something else or just don't use it at all unless you're using them on defense. By doing that and then using the Miner on the tower, you can turn them into a really powerful offense, and your opponent might not be able to use their arrows or Fireball at the right time. The Furnace is a really important card in this deck, and it is really what makes this deck so good in challenges. If you don't have a level 7 Furnace, then I recommend not using it in a challenge, because then those Fire Spirits will be one-shotted by the tower, which makes it difficult for you to pull off counters like Brennan is doing right here. Now the Log is in this deck. The Log is a very strong card now that has been buffed once again. It's definitely a legendary quality now, but it is your only spell. Because it's your only spell, you have to be very careful about how you use it. You don't want to just throw it around all the time because your opponent might catch you off guard. This deck that you're using doesn't have a lot of splash damage, and because of that, you could be susceptible to troops or decks that are similar to your own. So use the log very carefully, and if you don't have the log, then you can definitely switch it out for the zap, and this deck will work very well. If you like this video, go ahead, like I said, give it a like and subscribe. Leave some comments in there. I really appreciate your support. All of you have been so amazing at helping my channel out, and I really just wanted to say thank you. This is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in the arena.